Here. Bradsky.
Here.
Yang. Here. Chair Johnson.
I am here.
There are 5 present, 1 excused absent, being Commissioner Keeling. Item number 1 for discussion is Resolution 25-542, recommendation for City Council approval of Healthy Home and Power of Home program guidelines citywide.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Commissioners, over the last couple of weeks. Just the questions that I've seen kind of come in as well. I know this is a follow-up. We did have a precursor for this, but I know Russ is back with us, and we'll hand it over to Director Newton so they can provide some updates on just how they've incorporated your questions, feedback, and any questions that we have still lingering out there. I'm sure he'll be able to answer. So handing it over to you, Director Newton.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Commissioners, you just said exactly what I was going to say. So, so we'll hand it over to Chief Resilience Officer Russ Stark to provide an update on how that feedback that you've given has been incorporated into the guidelines, which are back for your action today.
Hello,
thank
Russ.
You.
Yes.
Chair Johnson and Commissioners. So we are back and have been working hard post your initial feedback about these 2 programs to make some changes to better align with the policymaker wishes for these programs. So to briefly review, we've got 2 programs that we're moving forward with here, Healthy Homes and Power of Home. Healthy Homes will include both pre-weatherization measures and weatherization. And just to remind you, pre-weatherization activities will only take place so that weatherization activities can take place. They will not take place independently. Power of Home will involve home electrification measures. We've talked about the purpose quite a bit, so I probably don't need to review these, but obviously high-level goals are around reducing energy cost burden, improving health and comfort of homes for our low and moderate income residents, and for the time being, focusing that on homeowners. So again, the types of improvements in pre-weatherization under Healthy Homes would include things like outdated and unsafe wiring being replaced, removal of vermiculite and asbestos, mold, leaking pipes that might be causing problems that are preventing weatherization, damaged roofs, etc. And then weatherization itself, the typical measures are wall and roof insulation and air sealing, along with weather stripping, in some cases window repair. And in Healthy Homes, eligible homes would be owner-occupied. These would be 1 to 4 unit dwellings. And for Healthy Homes, we do propose making those all those dwellings eligible. It's hard to weatherize only 1 unit in a 2 or 4 unit building. And eligibility would be at 80% of AMI or the geographic area that we have talked about previously. Again, Power of Home, overall purpose, helping our lower income households move away from the use of fossil fuels, improving health, comfort, and safety, shielding our lower income households from increased costs as other homeowners electrify their homes, lowering energy cost burden, reducing in-home emissions as well as greenhouse gas emissions. And this would be done essentially by switching out gas-based appliances for, in some cases electric appliances, for high-efficiency electric counterparts. Those improvements would include things like air source heat pumps and the versions of heat pumps that are used for water heaters as well as clothes dryers, electric induction stoves, upgrades to electrical panels and panel expansions that may be required for moving toward more electrical appliances. And here with Power of Home, again, we would focus on owner-occupied. We would limit Power of Home to single unit homes because of the complexity of potentially doing these improvements in both the unit of a homeowner and of their tenants, wanting to kind of simplify in this first stage of just kind of focusing on homeowners. And here for Power of Home, we would be at 50% of AMI or below, or the geographic proxy area, which is a smaller area, as you'll recall. We also heard your feedback about sort of not just sort of making this available kind of first come, first serve, but really kind of targeting the programs, obviously to low income and high energy burdened homeowners. That's sort of been the case all along, but also specifically to homes in climate vulnerable neighborhoods, as well as those homes that are deferred or denied by other service providers. And this will be the easiest and fastest source of potential projects for this program. as well as homes with unaddressed health and safety issues where weatherization is being prevented. So some of the changes that we made or adjustments with regard to 2 to 4 unit buildings, again, healthy homes, no change, would still be eligible, but the cap would remain at $50,000 for those buildings. Power of home would be ineligible for the time being in those 2 to 4 unit buildings. We removed the rental properties for the purpose of simplifying administration of these programs as they are young and having sort of a clearer focus. There obviously is some complexity in working with the kind of landlord-tenant situation, but we do believe it will want to keep looking at that option for the future. And then per your feedback, we removed the asset limit requirements in looking at income qualifications. We also, per feedback from commissioners, added a couple of specific options under power of home in particular, which is the combination washer and heat pump dryer units, which weren't mentioned before, as well as specifying not just electrical panel upgrades, but also expansions. And then in healthy homes, just to provide a little bit more clarity, the eligible activities would include improvements recommended by the home energy audit that may or may not be specifically listed in those eligible activities. But if there's something that is recommended by the energy audit as a cost-effective measure, it's sort of implicitly eligible. So those are the changes and updates. I will wrap there and welcome any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Are there any questions at this time from commissioners that we didn't get to? Commissioner Provatsky.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. Just want to thank Chief Resilience Officer Stark and all the department staff who have put in work and all my colleagues who have put in so much work to get these here. I came in at the last minute and had several very specific, absurd notes to make as a self-proclaimed energy nerd and someone who's electrified his house in a much scrappy and less intentional way than the city staff will do for all of our residents. So my only slight heartburn is that we don't have any of the income qualified areas for the Power of Home program, but I really appreciate the way the income qualification is built for both of these. I think so many new programs at the state and federal and local levels have a hard time making sure the income qualification isn't a burden. It's actually a way to serve more people, and the way the staff have set it up is really to the best practice that I've seen of allowing the mapping tool, the self-attestation, the program qualification, all those things really matter. So just want to thank folks for including the feedback, Chair Johnson, for you to gather this, and also for all the work that's gone into this. One small question, I'm curious in terms of especially on the energy side, and the weatherization made me think of this. How are we considering the interaction with utility programs? So specifically, I'm sure they would, if they're made aware, they'd love to be able to count this in their eco stats and all of those things, but how are we considering both the financing side on the utility program or even just the credit sort of claiming, if that makes sense?
Yes, Chair Johnson, Commissioner Provatsky, great question. So both with utility rebates and the potential of federal rebates that we understand the state is moving forward with that program, the city would seek to maximize capturing those rebates. Because the city will be actually making the payments for these projects, we would maximize our ability to capture those rebates and then put them essentially back into the programs to do additional properties. There may be some cases where those rebates are only eligible or credits are only eligible to a homeowner, in which case obviously we couldn't intervene in that situation. But we certainly believe that in many cases, both the utility programs and the federal rebates, a third party such as the city, could actually be eligible to receive those as long as we show that we're the ones doing the work.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Provatsky, and thank you, Mr. Russ as well. Mr. Stark, excuse me. Commissioner Bowie, did I see your hand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I was like looking over here and I was like, okay. Commissioner Bowie.
Yeah, just a quick, and also I just want to echo what was shared. Thank you so much. I appreciate the staff, all the thoughtfulness that went into designing this program and now into the piloting of this program, and just like all of the rich debate and discussion around like how we can make sure these resources go back into our community and help improve our housing stock. My question is really simple, and I was trying to find it in like the previous presentations and even last year's budget. But can you share how much funding is designated to each program? Is it going to be this from the same pool until the money runs out, or is there dollars amounts that's designated? I was trying to find that in the last one, but
Sure.
I don't know if that's been changed or anything.
Chair Johnson, Commissioner Bowie. So as you might recall, the original Healthy Homes program was $1 million. A little piece of that will go into staff time administration. So we think there's closer to $900,000 available for projects in Healthy Homes. That was one-time funding. Power of Home has $300,000 available for year one, but that is ongoing funding from our franchise fee changes that you all made. And so moving forward, it is likely that we will sort of meld both programs into one using those ongoing resources. But for the time being, we thought it was important to kind of distinguish the one-time funding source and the ongoing funding source. So I would expect that when we're back next year talking about this, we may be recommending that change to kind of consolidate into one program, assuming that the funds have been expended by that point, which we certainly intend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. I think that also aligns with just some of the feedback that we had received from commissioners last year in the mirroring of that. So I think not to speak on behalf of the body, but to speak on behalf of the body, I think we had interest in that. So I'm sure that there is shared alignment there when it comes to just the alignment and funding. Along those lines, I think one of the things that I thought was helpful to also know and go back to, but I didn't hear in the presentation, but I think we heard it a couple weeks ago, was just also the partnerships with pre-existing either pre-weatherization programs like Energy Sense and the work that they do, but also like with Excel Energy. And just could you share a little bit about like, I'm anticipating that this project will also partner closely with some of these, and I know you mentioned Community Action Partnership last time. So could you just specify, how, I guess, the timeline for this, and then how we're anticipating working with those organizations that have either have those programs up and running, or they are also thinking about ways to continue to address our overall, energy burden homes and households, knowing that we have several zip codes across the city that have higher disconnection rates than others. So just kind of wondering, I know it's there, just could you share a little bit more for folks that want to just hear how we're going to work with them with this program in the future?
Yes, Chair Johnson, thank you for the question. So today, both Community Action Programs of Ramsey and Washington, who implement federal weatherization projects, and Energy Sense Coalition, who implement the low-income weatherization programs that are approved by the Public Utilities Commission using funds that Excel has to expend for that purpose. They both have told us clearly that they run into properties that have more extensive need for pre-weatherization investment, that their programs are unable to fund because of funding limitations. And so I know we even heard about one specific one just recently from one of those organizations, and so we've already got sort of potentially project number one.
Awesome. Yeah.
To make a phone call, and we expect to be in very regular communication with them to essentially receive the information about those deferrals that they are needing to make. We understand that they have to make them fairly regularly. So that's the first part. The second part is, yes, it's going to take that ongoing coordination to really make this work well, and they are really helpful additional eyes and ears about folks in the community who are already seeking help in this area, which is the easiest way for us to then come in and help, rather than needing to sort of generate that outreach and marketing ourselves. And so we think that'll be a really valuable partnership. We know separately that Excel had approved by the Public Utilities Commission just recently, as part of their Natural Gas Innovation Act filing, that they're going to need to do some work within their gas service territory, of which St. Paul is the largest city, in this very same area of work, which is low-income weatherization and electrification. And so they're going to be setting up some programs very similar to ours. And so that will help expand the opportunities even further in our community. And we're very much in touch with them, kind of giving our suggestions about how our program is going to work and how they might conceive of theirs. They have a pretty fast turnaround time coming up to determine their kind of program eligibility guidelines, et cetera.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone's hand? Okay, I just want to say it's been really great to be able to learn from this work as well. I know that I see Chelsea with the Needles Minnesota in the room, and I'm really thankful to all of the constituents that have reached out to bring this forward, and I'm excited to see what the future of the program will bring to the city. And I also am just like, whenever an item warrants all the commissioners or most of the commissioners to respond with questions and engage with it, I think that just is a testament to just how important it is for us to also see this be a resource that can get out the door and actually get to community members and really be able to learn from the successes that it has. And so I hope that we will, I know that this item will both come here, and just for clarification, the recommendation right now for the resolution, the action we'll be taking will be to refer it. So to approve it and refer it to the council today. And so if it passes here in this body, we'll be bringing it under suspension later on today at the council meeting for a formal approval. But we do have to take an action today to do that. So I would entertain a motion from from Commissioner Naker to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
One
Thank you,
correction in
Mr.
the roll
Sark.
call, there were 6 present and 1 excused absent. So with this vote, there are 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you for that correction, and thank you, Mr. Stark, for your presentation and
Thank you,
feedback.
Chair Johnson and Commissioners, and we certainly hope that your colleagues on the City Council will accept your recommendation wholeheartedly.
I have a feeling that they'll be able to do that. Thank you so much. Oh man, we've got to talk to them, make sure we talk to them thoroughly. Alrighty.
Item number 2 for discussion is Resolution RES 25-562, resolution approving modification of the 2002 home loan to St. Paul Family Project Limited Partnership, owner of Jackson Street Village Project located at 1497 Jackson Street in St. Paul, and forgiveness of accrued interest, District 6, Ward 5.
I appreciate that, and I know that we had this presentation. If you remember, we had a staff report last week on this item, and so I'll hand it over to Director Newton if there's any updates, and if not, we'll just go into the action. I know Commissioner Naker had her hand up.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Commissioners, as you mentioned, this is just an item you received a presentation on last week. It's back for your action today, and staff recommends approval of the item.
I will say that while we're on it, and personal privilege, I still genuinely enjoyed having the developers and property managers here with us. That was a really unique opportunity, and so genuinely super supportive of this item. Commissioner Naker, did you have any comments from Council Vice President and Commissioner Kim?
Thanks, Chair Johnson. No additional comments, but as I mentioned last week, Councilmember Kim is on an excused absence, wanted to say that she's strongly in support of the project and would have moved it if she were here, but in her absence, I will move approval.
All righty. Commissioner Naker moves approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, 0 opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 3 is a staff report. SR 25-66, presentation of Ramsey County HRA/EDA legislation.
Alrighty, so we actually have an opportunity to hear from Ramsey County on this item. It was something that I think we've all either received either an email or some initial communications from, but ultimately this body would have to act on, and so I thought it was important that they come in and present with us, and so I'll hand it over to Director Newton.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Johnson. Commissioners, as you see, Commissioner Zhang is here, and also Community and Economic Development Director Josh Olson from Ramsey County as well, to provide an informational presentation on the legislation being proposed. They'll answer any questions you have, and I know we'll be happy to follow up if you have additional questions afterward, but there's a lot to take in, so we'll let them get started on that presentation.
All right, welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Johnson, Commissioners, and Director Newton. Thank you for having us back here. I am Ramsey County Commissioner Mai Chang. I represent District 6, or much of the east side of St. Paul, and I've had the honor and privilege of serving as our HRA, the county's HRA chair for the last 3 years now. And so I'm here today to talk about our Economic Development Authority request at the legislature, as well as give you all a report back on where the county has invested with our HRA levy. I also have here with us Director Josh Olson from our Community and Economic Development Department. I have the slides. Is there?
It is typically voice activated. We should be able to do that by making it voice activated presentation slides. It never likes me, but there we go. It's there.
Just a delay in the voice.
It's just a, yes, that's.
Okay, all right, there you go. Thank you so much. Again, we're just highlighting our HRA levy, history of that, and also going through where we have spent, and then also our EDA request here. This is our new board that started. As you all know, our mission and vision at the county is to ensure that we build a vibrant community where all are valued and thrive. The board also sets the mission of making sure that the County of Excellence is working with you all to enhance our quality of life. I wanted to point to this. This is available online electronically in our PowerPoint, but it also, when you go on it, you can press it where you can see the full plan of our economic competitive inclusion plan. This was done a few years ago with previous boards, but it is also a plan that helps to drive and inform the work of our community and economic development team currently. And it also has this piece where you can also track our progress, where we mention some of our work and also about where we are not fulfilling them quite yet. And so that's why we are also here before you all to seek support in that. For our Housing and Redevelopment Authority levy, we actually haven't levied it since we started levying it in 2022, and we were the last county in the metro area to levy for this. Since then, it's generated about between 11 to 13 million. Last year, it was 13.5 million. Oh, no, for 2025, it was 13.5 million. And that solicitation process is opening up very soon here on Friday as well. And that is where all developers of affordable housing can apply for that solicitation. And just so you all know, before we were able to receive permission and or ability to levy for this, the county received support from all of our cities except for the city of North St. Paul to participate in this programming, and the agreement from the past council or the HRA commissioners was to ensure that there was parity between our suburban cities and the city of St. Paul, and that is something that our staff strive towards for the 50-50 spending parity. In addition to that, we are required by statute, by state statute, to ensure that we receive city support for any of the projects that we recommend for funding. And so those programs currently include our affordable housing infrastructure investments, the down payment assistance, and also the Emerging and Diverse Developers Program. And then our redevelopment program includes the critical corridors in both planning, development, and infrastructure, as well as a suburban commercial corridor initiative, very similar to the city's commercial corridor program. In addition to that, we also have site assessment grants. In 2024, over $5.2 million went to projects located in St. Paul. These are all projects that are listed here. I also have a comprehensive list here of like past projects that we had funded as well too. But these are the programs that were funded. And then I'd be happy to take questions now, or would you like to take questions afterwards with that section?
Commissioner, I will ask our commissioners if there's any questions in the first half of the slides. That as we continue to go forward, there'll be more content around the economic development piece, which is the main point of it. So if folks are comfortable, we can move forward, Commissioner, and wait till the end for the questions.
Okay, great. And so next, I'll hand it off to Director Josh Olson to go through the other part of our economic competitive inclusion plan of like some of those strategies looking forward and for business programming. It's also very timely too, since you are all going to be discussing economic investment strategies later this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Zhang. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for having us here. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously wanted to set the stage a little bit for talking about the EDA because it ties back to the HRA. So we wanted to start there. Commissioner Zhang and I have been on a little bit of a roadshow throughout the county talking about HRA and how we've collectively invested in projects, programs, and services that benefit residents throughout the county. You know, when we've talked about economic development, we kind of come right back to our ECI plan. So our Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan. And I think if you have taken an opportunity to check it out, and I really do encourage it, it really strikes the connection point, the connections and the linkages between housing, business development, redevelopment, as well as workforce. And that was intentionally done back in 2021, 22. And it was in part because I think what we learned very quickly was investing only in housing won't get us out of a housing crisis. We need to find opportunities to invest in the growth of wages. We need to find ways to support business growth and job growth as a way to kind of fulfill a promise that we said through that ECA plan, but also to demonstrate that these things work together. And when we work together in all of these circles, we really find it. And so I called out a few statistics here, pulled from it. These, I'm sure, are no surprise to you. But, you know, 1 in 2 renters in the county are cost burdened. 1 in 5 homeowners are cost burdened. When we look at workers, 30% of workers within Ramsey County are paid less than a living wage. And so that kind of underscores what I said is, you know, in order to kind of build housing for all, we need to really fulfill and support worker wage growth. But also this last box, which is when we took an opportunity and a scan of how Ramsey County stacks up within just our regional partners. And what I mean by regional partners are other counties. We're competitive. We like to look at that. Business starts are lagging behind. Hennepin County has job growth that is higher than Ramsey County, and that bears out. It more clearly bears out even as we do racial and ethnic desegregation or disaggregation, sorry, not desegregation. Disaggregation of that data, that's very clearly shows that we are falling behind in a couple of important measures. And so as we look at the ECI plan, it very clearly shows areas in the tracker that Commissioner Zhang pointed out that Ramsey County as the host of this ECI plan, have not done enough in several of our strategies. And so why we've been at the state capitol asking for this legislation is a response to that need. Business programming is not necessarily a new thing for Ramsey County. It's definitely an emerging area for us. And, you know, I think a lot of it started back in 2019 when my predecessor, Carrie Collins, assumed a role as the new director of community economic development. So we were a division, not a department at that point. And a couple of those key things that we started was a partnership with Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers. They have an open to business program that supports entrepreneurs and small businesses with direct, no cost technical assistance. That is a countywide offering. I would say it tends to find a lot of attractiveness with Ramsey County or St. Paul residents in particular. But we don't try to track necessarily where they're coming from, because we know business, especially entrepreneurs at that stage, they may live in one jurisdiction, but maybe seeking development in another. And so we just literally, one of the core attributes of that program is, do you live in Ramsey County, or are you working to grow a business in Ramsey County? That's the only thing. It's one or the other. This Open to Business program is certainly something that we've seen a lot of growth over the last several years. And in just last year alone, we had well over 150 businesses take advantage of those free technical services. That equates to about 1,000 plus hours of person-to-person support. The next two that I want to talk about are CEO Next and CEO Now. CEO Next provides second stage businesses. These are the businesses that are growing, but they have somewhere around 10 to 100 employees. And they're probably hitting a wall or a ceiling in terms of their growth. And so this is a peer-to-peer cohort where CEOs get to sit across from one another and work through some strategies as well as a way to kind of build their business up. This is a program that has been a partnership with the City of St. Paul and as well as other regional partners for a number of years. It used to be called Economic Gardening. This is that new brand name. CEO Now is a brand new offering that we, again, a partnership with Hennepin County that was modeled after CEO Next and focuses on that earlier stage. And so wanted to call that out as one thing we learned, both Hennepin County and Ramsey County, as we been working on the CEO Next program, is that a lot of businesses have these similar attributes and questions around growth, but they don't have 10 employees yet. They maybe have 5 or 8. And so this was an opportunity to kind of build it. We had our first cohort last year, and 5 of the 6 businesses are from the City of St. Paul, so we're very excited about that. Very quickly on the attraction side, RamseyCountyMeansBusiness.com is a website. This was something that was established in 2019 as a way to put Ramsey County, the geography, not Ramsey County, the Inc., but Ramsey County, the geography on the map as a place to do business. We had heard over time, as we look at the landscape nationally, counties are often a geography that businesses and site selectors look for first before they go to that next stage, which is talking to cities. That particular resource we retooled very quickly during the pandemic, and it became a very vital resource for businesses looking for pandemic relief. And then lastly, I want to hit on this. I'm happy to come back with a much deeper presentation on this particular work, but we had received an earmark, a federal earmark, a couple years ago, and we're kicking off this work this year. The Ramsey County Reimagination Resource Center, that sounds like it's a physical place. This is, I'd like to think of the center as a place where things come together, not necessarily a physical location yet, but rather just a recognition that our business community organizations provide a valuable service to our businesses. Sometimes they're an extension of our two government entities, but sometimes they're the front lines too, in terms of where do you go when you want to start a business, you're running into a challenge, growing your business, finding employees, et cetera. And so our community-based organizations, we saw very clearly during the pandemic that shocks like a pandemic have as much of an impact on them as they do on businesses themselves. And so if we're really wanting to foster a strengthen an ecosystem where business can kind of start picking up, we have to look at our business community organizations as well. So that in particular initiative is centered around that, and we're kicking that off this next year, or this year. Yeah.
Excuse me, Josh. Commissioner Bowie may have a question for you.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you, Josh. I have a quick question about the business center I'm really excited about, because I know Ramsey County has quite a few properties across the city around workforce development. So is there a location already for the Reimagination Resource Center?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bowie, no, this is not a physical location at this point. We are kickstarting this process first through an RFI, or request for information. We're asking our business support organizations what their niches are, what their challenges are, where maybe they see some opportunities. Again, that center is like kind of bringing this information more linked together so that businesses can see handoffs happening. If, for example, they come in asking one particular organization and that organization has less familiarity with, let's say, restaurants, and they can be moved over to a particular organization that has a skill set that matches their needs. And so that's kind of the point at this point. I think through conversations, I think there will be an opportunity to think about how this stuff could be made more centralized. There's some comparisons, I'll just say, with our Reimagination Center to some activities that the Hennepin County has done, where they've established an online or a virtual center through a platform called Elevate Business. So there's some similarities there. I think we're different, and we're trying to fit a particular gap here. But yeah, it's not a physical location at this point.
And Chair and Commissioner, if I can just add to that, just for clarification, that's very similar to what we do. So a lot of what they do with the county is they refer businesses to other organizations, business support organizations, and we do the same. And we've recently brought someone on staff who came from one of those organizations and has a lot of relationships. So we'll be working with the county. So we're not reinventing the wheel, that we're all gathering the information about what organizations specialize in what niches, what are the organizations we can refer. We don't have a ton of funding, and what we have are relationships, and that's the same with the county. We have relationships with the county and with the other organizations who do provide technical assistance or lending, and so they're actually doing very similar to what we do and to what we'll continue to do, and we'll be partnering on this effort so that we don't step on each other or reinvent the wheel.
Alrighty, thank you.
And moving towards our legislative request, and just given the information that you all have received about where our current economic programming is and where we would like to go is, last year we sought for this legislation, which is for the Economic Development Authority. Ramsey County, again, is the only county that doesn't have this economic development arm. And we would be also the last one to be able to get it too, whereas other counties in the metro here have community development authorities and or economic development authorities. This year we received sponsors, Senator Herr, as well as Representative Liz Lee on the east side. This request is seeking for our ability to use our HRA levy towards economic programming. And this would, again, support diversifying industries, communities, and emerging entrepreneurs. Also, with feedback from our cities last year, we made sure to include in legislation that cities would have the choice to opt into this type of programming. So if they do not opt into this programming, the housing programming, the current ones that we have would just still apply. And in addition to this, the same statute would still apply, is that we would still need city support for any type of projects that get supported through this. So the cities that have expressed support to date are Roseville, Shoreview, Lauderdale, Falcon Heights, and White Bear Lake. They've submitted in both letters of support and or official action from their council for this. And just to clarify again, is that the support would have to come via the HRA, the city's HRA, just for clarity there. And opting into the programming is cities would have to opt in by July, just for like taxing purposes of like with being able to tax and be able to like opt into the programming for the following year.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yeah.
I did get a chance to review the frequently asked questions, and I'm just wanting to clarify if it's June or July for when the bodies would have to opt in or opt out.
July
for
1st.
This year.
Yeah, it's July 1st.
So it's July 1st, okay.
Yeah, and also just depending on how the legislature's timing moves, we may likely ask for participation by July of next year so that we can start programming for the following year, so in 2027 instead.
Okay, so 2025's tax levy would not necessarily be impacted this year, regardless of how it goes for the state legislature. It'll stay housing.
No, we, just so I understand correctly, so if it passes through the legislature this year, we won't rush cities to take official action until next year, July 2026.
Okay.
And Commissioner, there would be no change in the levy. It would just be in the way that they use the levy that they already have established.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Nguyen. And again, this request just means asking for flexibility in our HRE funding along with our city partners in the priorities as you see fit. Our initial plan is really just about $2 million of our HRE levy that would go towards business programming. And again, geographic parity of our HRE levy spending still remains. Any other questions? And then, of course, the ask is, right now the bill is there in the Senate omnibus bill. And they would need a conference and figure that out. But, you know, of course, getting a letter of support from our cities would encourage them to keep it in mind as they have those deliberations. And that's why we are here before you all asking for a letter of support.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that some of the biggest things, like my biggest questions for this is really just kind of understand kind of like on the back end. I know the slide with the percentage breakdowns, like that just talks about like how the levy is currently used. I think it's like slide 5 or 6, that one. Mm-hmm. Could you just share like how you envision the percentages changing if this were to be passed, and also if there would be any changes to the geographic spending parity agreement that's in place if we do transition? So will that still be that 50% of the total levy will be used in St. Paul? And then if so, like how does that translate for our city when it comes to the percentages of housing, economic development, in this case, redevelopment? Could you just share kind of like what that would look like as it relates to our city? So myself and commissioners can understand just kind of like 13.5 million, 50% of that, would that be the same still? And it's just that money now can be also used for economic development, and how much you're anticipating spending.
Yeah, I'll start off with a visual of what we can imagine is just our current HRE levy, the pie, right? Half of it right now is given to the city of St. Paul, half of it is to our suburban cities. Within that, if the city of St. Paul doesn't want to participate in the economic development programming, 50% of that, or in this case, 100% of your portion there would remain and go towards our current programming here, right? But if you do choose to participate, then I would say just we're looking at 1 or 2%, so $2 million out of the full total, around that $13 to $15 million. So I hope that answers it, but I'll also defer to Director Olson here to add on to this too.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think what you would expect to see is if all communities were to opt in, there would be a reduction in the housing number and maybe even a little bit of the redevelopment number to balance it out with the business. I will say, because of the flexibility that we've gained through through the housing sales tax, we'd actually see not a reduction in the dollars going towards affordable housing infrastructure, just a change in the percentages. I think one thing I want to I missed an opportunity to mention earlier, just to kind of pinpoint an example that we have within our existing portfolio of programming. Is our Emerging and Diverse Developer Program. I view this program as actually a business development program, an economic development program, more than necessarily a housing program, in part because it's a two-part process. One is, it is a little bit of supplying emerging and diverse developers with new technical tools, education, as a way to support their business and their growth. How we would kind of categorize it as on the housing side is because the majority of the money goes towards affordable housing projects at the end. And that makes up the lion's share of that program. And so that's just an example of where we've been able to kind of blend the lines because it centers around affordable housing. But, you know, as we think about these other areas around workforce development, business development, that line becomes a lot less blurred and it looks very much like an economic development piece. So to kind of get back to the point, I think the question was, you know, we anticipate about 15% of the 15 or 13.5 million or thereabouts going towards business programming. But we'll need to lobby and ask this question of all of our jurisdictions if they choose to stay or want that full flexibility and blend. So we have 19 jurisdictions we'll have to ask this question to.
Sure.
That may change all of this calculus. It's a fun little math problem that we have in front of us, provided that the legislation gets passed.
Thank you. And I see Commissioner Naker and then Commissioner Yang.
Thanks so much, Chair Johnson. The way I understand this program, it's either all the money goes to affordable housing or some of it goes to affordable housing and some of it goes to economic development, to your question just now, Chair Johnson. And I, you know, super supportive of affordable housing and of economic development. I think we could probably use all of the dollars for either of those two things and we would still have plenty of need left. So to me, theoretically, this makes sense. What I keep coming back to, and which I know I've asked both of you before, relates to the amount of say that the HRA and the city have over how the economic development dollars are spent. Affordable housing, you know, and I know we've been partnering so far, but I think we'd all just say more affordable housing is more affordable housing. But when it comes to economic development, there's so many different types of things one can do. And given that we have a lot of needs, and Ramsey County is not a large county, and St. Paul has a lot of economic development challenges ahead, I think we really need to be strategic and not just sort of all be doing slightly different economic development things, but be moving in the same direction. We're about to talk about an economic development strategy that we'll be releasing an RFP for the city as a whole. That might have strategies that we want help with from the county's HRA. So I guess what I keep coming back to is how much say will the city have over how those dollars are used, and how specifically will that say be given?
Sure, I can do that.
And then just share what the process currently.
Yeah. Madam Chair, Commissioner Naker, I mean, I want to follow up on what Commissioner Zhang said at the beginning, which is we don't select projects without your approval. So those projects that have come to us through competitive solicitations are projects that you all have deemed, worthy of getting funding. And that's a requirement per our statute. So we do require that, and we would expect the same thing as we kind of look towards the future on the economic development side. This may be a little bit different, where it may not be always project-based, it may be program-based. In the case of like Open to Business, which is a program that serves the entire county, we look and we evaluate it yearly about its performance and how it's doing and whether it's serving the intended purpose. And so I think we would approach that as we've approached things in the past, is evaluating those programs for how they're working and how they're working in conformance with our ECI plan, which is very clear about how we should invest and how we should support businesses within particular communities, but also as the county as a whole.
A quick follow-up, Chair Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Olson. And I know we have a whole year to figure this out, so we've got plenty of time. But that is specifically what I'm asking about. I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of it's different when it's a program versus a project. And I really appreciate the value that all of these programs bring. But what we hear from our business owners, and I'm sure you hear the same thing, is what they need more than anything else is money. And none of these are giving money. And so, again, I come back to, will these dollars just be funneled into these programs and sort of the St. Paul participants kind of get billed to the city side of the new EDA dollars? Or do we have the opportunity to say, actually, we don't want our dollars to go into Open to Business, we'd like them to go into X. And so that's really what I want to make sure we can figure out before we take action on this in a year.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Naker, and I will take that also back too, because I think that there'll be other conversations as well with our planning and economic development team, but also just here at the table too. It's something that I also just care a lot about as well, since we have to be able to either opt in or opt out. I think the involvement of this body into how the city is able to utilize or be a part of that process is really important. And I think it'll be very helpful to like the ultimate pathway of getting us to opt in or opt out for sure. Commissioner Yang and then Commissioner Pravatsky.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. Well, I first want to say thank you both so much for your presentation as a HRA commissioner and council member. This is my first official presentation or any sort of briefing I've gotten about the legislative request, and just wanted to share overall, I am very supportive of it. I especially really appreciate the slide that you have here, number 10, staying the course. And you talked about how building housing, more housing isn't just that we need more housing, but there's just so many different factors that really intersect into the success of that, from the workforce development, the small business supports, and I completely agree with that. And the reason why this really just struck me is because, I mean, I really do see that we are living in a time and day where there's so much constraints just around housing development overall, and I know that one thing I hear a lot is, well, how can we expand the toolbox so that we can build more housing? And like, I really believe that this is a pathway to doing that. And so I'm really hopeful about this. Yeah, so I wish you all success in the legislative request. I mean, you gave a brief status update on where it's at right now, and so I would love to just stay in the loop about that. And I do echo the things that Commissioner Naker shared. I mean, one thing we talk about at the table here a lot is how we can make sure we're not duplicating our programming and just being really strategic about where we put money. And so that's what I would be interested in hearing more about as things roll out.
Thank you, Commissioner Yang. Commissioner Pravatsky?
Thanks, Chair Johnson. And just want to echo many of the points that Commissioner Yang made as well. I'm strongly supportive. I just really want to name how regional both of these challenges are for us. You know, in Ward 4, if folks can't find a home or can't start a business, they might drift north into Roseville, Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, whatever. The same way in, Commissioner Yang's district, they might go into Maplewood or, so I just really appreciate the partnership that's going on between the staffs. And to name Commissioner Naker's point, I think as long as there's that coordination and communication to make sure we're benefiting from sort of that, I think that gives me the comfortability. And just want to name that this added flexibility to have more dollars that can go into economic development is just I think it matters so much. These local businesses are what make our neighborhoods thrive. They're what draws people in. They're what keep people here. And so also just want to name, it really is in some ways to me a very simple decision of, the HRA levy was created before the Metro Housing Sales Tax came through. Now it exists. We can just acknowledge that funding stream exists and adjust our funding streams. And actually, to Commissioner Naker's point about the sort of what our small businesses need is money, which is painfully true. The one piece, I would support that the businesses I talk to, obviously, even the difference between a grant and a loan, they're like, oh my God, don't give me another loan. I'm so leveraged, I can't even talk about it. But the one programmatic piece I have heard somewhat of is as we create sort of citywide ordinances that really match our values, like earn, sick, and safe and all these things, I have heard from some small businesses that sort of the upswing of those and ramping into those is something where I don't know if they're really asking for technical expertise, but even just sort of almost like a service partnership of like, we're not Walmart, we don't have a corporate HR department that can just implement any new rule, and we have this people power. So I will name, that is a resource question, but also might be a program question, but I would appreciate, and I'll follow up to ask more about these programs too, just the resources the county has that we can be pointing folks to as well. That's something I feel like I have never done a fantastic job of as an aide or now as a member. So just naming, very supportive and curious to learn more because I appreciate the thought and the coordination going on.
May I wrap up?
Yeah, but are there any other questions from the body? I think that one of the things that would be helpful for us to also just share is like for some of the programs, I know just one of the things that came up with this too is there's an interest as well in just kind of being in the know of what are some of the things that you guys are thinking about. I know here on the east side, when I get conversations from businesses in my ward or kind of throughout the region, I'm hearing all things about the East Side real estate development strategy. And one of the biggest things that we have right now is trying to acquire property and get some of our Black and brown businesses that occupy the East Side, have stayed on the East Side for a long time, into actually being able to utilize their building infrastructure as an economic engine for their families. They've invested a ton of equity that they don't see because they don't own their buildings. And so as you're thinking about economic development, I strongly encourage you to also think about the tenants that are in the business space that do not own their physical location, especially as they go into some of the places that they see. And I think what you're hearing too is like there's a general understanding of like economic development is incredibly important to our city. We understand and we're investing in our strategies. We're hoping to be able to implement those, at least in the city. And so I don't know how else all the other of the 19 jurisdictions, I'm not sure how the other 18 are handling economic development for their city, but I think that the city of St. Paul definitely has a little bit of a direct approach to it that may result in really thinking outside the box for what that could look like as far as the county's investment in the city of St. Paul, and it may look different than some of our other jurisdiction partners. And so I think it would be really great to have a continuation of this, especially as it goes through the session and as you hear from it how what updates are coming through, and especially if we have some time to talk about it, I think it would be really great for you all to actually come back to this body to talk about if there's any follow-up questions when it relates to like it being a support or, kind of knowing where it'll pan out for the session. I think really does really, I guess, dictates whether or not we have to do anything. I think for clarification, opting in or opting out, is it an annual opt-in or opt-out process? If you opt in once, is that good forever? If you opt out 1 year, can you opt in the next? Just from a technical lens, specifically, would we be opting in 1 year, or would this be a one-time opt-in?
That's a great question. Have we checked in with our attorneys on that?
Yeah, I can answer that question. There's definitely an opportunity for you to opt in and then opt out. This is not an opt-in forever. There is a time component to this, and so I can certainly come back to you with clarity around that. It may be not as simple to say we're opting in now and then you opt out and then it's the next, it's 6 months later.
Sure.
There may be a little bit of a wind down or wind up depending on which direction that is. So I think there's that. I mean, I think it's part of certainly in my position, and I think I'll speak on behalf of Commissioner Zhang here for a moment, which is always a risky proposition to speak for my elected chair, but to just say that we want to be back here to articulate how the HRA has been continuing to be spent. And we've heard that loud and clear. You are not the only council who has asked that same question. And so I think we've heard that. Certainly we heard that as we attempted this legislation last year, and we've taken that to heart. And I expect, whether we're in a legislative ask place next year or not, we're going to be back here talking about how the HRA gets spent, how it is distributed, what kinds of projects and residents are benefiting, what is that impact? And so I think that I'm ready to come back and add that onto my yearly calendar to come back. So,
alrighty, I see Commissioner Bowie.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I don't have any questions, but I just want to highlight how I am just so impressed, particularly with the growth of the Emerging Developers program. I actually had a chance to be part of the first inaugural cohort. That was when I think Jerica, who was the one of the housing directors, or part of the HRA team, or excuse me, housing development team, spearheaded and designed that program. We had Todd from LISC, I believe, our ULI as well too. So it's been very unapologetic that I promote it, support it. I want to see it grow, but I also, like Chair Johnson had mentioned, and many of us want to see improvements on it. I know from my personal experience going through it, I was a council nerd just trying to see where the council played a role, but it was very technical, particularly around the capital stack, which, understanding how much it costs to build, I totally understand that. But Particularly, I would want to see improvements, and probably already have had that, but at least get some updates around where we can grow a stronger partnership on between the city, particularly around like DSI and some of the regulations, because as much as we are encouraging for our developers to be successful, it is a very complicated and complex process, knowing all of the different things, whether a building is in a vacant building program, whether or not there's like certain type of codes, and that was some of the things I kind of saw that were missing components. So as we're going to continue having these conversations, I'm really excited to learn more about not only like the projects, but really like those programs that are building and diversifying our wealth, and also diversifying our investments in our city. What I really love about the EDD program is that we have people who are like building for us, by us, and often when we think about these developments, we often think of people outside dollars. So it's really fascinating that we are really growing here in St. Paul, the network of developers who are really wanting to make sure they're investing here in St. Paul.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowie. And we have a couple other presentations today, so I'll hand it back to you just to wrap us up. And if folks have questions, Director Anderson, do they call you, do they text or email you, Commissioner Zhang? Just wondering where we can direct our questions. All right, so we'll reach out to Director Olson if we have questions just around this item as well, and I'm sure Director Newton can also be able to be that connection point for us too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Johnson and Commissioners, Director Newton. It's been such a humbling experience going out to all of our cities and having such an open dialogue about the work that we are doing together. When I started, I kept throwing around the number of 15,000 units of deeply affordable housing units that Ramsey County was missing. And when I checked in with our staff, we're like, are we making a dent? Are we making a dent? Well, we actually don't know, because as we are adding units of deeply affordable housing units, the income levels of so many of our residents are still not increasing, right? So more and more cost burden. I know you know this too, and I see that affordable housing is on the same side of the coin as economic development for our businesses, especially on the east side too, as we have known from our east side funders collaborative and also our east side groups to know that the investments on the east side hasn't been there for economic development as well. So these are all values and sentiments that I share with you all too. And also reassurance again that the work that we are doing here together, that it's in state statute, that it requires us to partner with one another and for us to get city support. And in fact, I believe they say council support. So I just want to reassure you all on that. And signing on to a letter of support doesn't mean that you will opt in. Signing the letter of support today just means that you are supporting this legislation, in which you can have an opportunity to opt in and choose to do that by next year. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And if that's of interest to commissioners, I just ask that you kind of share with me. I'm trying to gauge as well where commissioners stand on the item, because I think that I did have a chance to review the letters and the resolutions that were added. At this time, the city is not one of those entities, so if that's of interest to you and if we are in agreement there, I have no problem bringing that forward with you all. Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is a staff report, SR 25-67, presentation on draft scope for citywide economic development strategy.
Thank you all. We have a couple of presentations that are left for today, but just so people do not fret at all or worry, we have the ability to lay over items into the 7th, so we'll take our time on all of these because I know they're important and there's never too much TIF to go around. So I'm looking forward to hearing from that update as well. Director Newton.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, Commissioners, and I want to thank Josh and Commissioner Zhang. We've worked really, really closely on this. I have had a lot of questions about the legislation, and I can talk to you more about it too as well, and continue to work with Josh and the Commissioner to get all of your questions answered. And it does relate to what we're doing and what you all have budgeted for in regard to our economic development strategy, and also the work that we already do. As I mentioned, we really work closely and coordinate our efforts. So I want to talk to you about the budget that we have for an economic development strategy, a citywide economic development strategy, and kind of help paint the picture of what that would look like. It's not something that I think we've really done clearly in St. Paul. The last economic development strategy that was done in 2016 was very specifically around a few initiatives, and this is really more a broad look at the state of our economic health in our city. Similar to what Commissioner Zhang mentioned too, before I get into this, I want to let you all know, and I think I've mentioned it before, but she mentioned sort of the shortage of housing units at certain levels of affordability, and that's a little bit hard to sort of comprehend, but we're working with the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis and a group, their housing group, to put together a dashboard that will kind of be able to give you at least annually a picture of that our residents' income levels versus the sort of cost of rent, and it's not so much that we need to build 15,000 units of housing at 30% of AMI, it's that the incomes don't match the housing stock, right? So we want to be able to give you the state of our housing situation in St. Paul is X, and like how people are cost burdened, and how we can kind of impact that. And what Josh said triggered for me to remind to you that there are levers related to affordable housing, but there is no way that we could ever throw enough money at housing to make it affordable to everyone. But we can pull different levers, right? We can we can work towards higher incomes. We can work towards skills training. We can work towards Commissioner Pravotsky will like transportation options. If you don't have to spend $800 a month on a car and insurance and gas and parking, you can afford housing, right? So it's that kind of alternative modes of transportation that impact housing affordability. All of that is economic development, So it's big and it's complicated and it overlaps. But so for this project, we will be looking for a consultant, and there are several who are very good at this, to look at a citywide economic development strategy to advance the future of our residents, businesses, and nonprofits and grow our tax base and our economic wealth. In general, the scope will include an in-depth analysis of our city's economy, focusing on the identification of key opportunities and threats associated with the city's current economic advantages and long-term sustainability. Develop a focused plan that emphasizes equity and includes implementable strategies for growing our city's economic base. And then recommended goals for strengthening and building our economy with strategies, tactics, guidelines, and timelines for achieving those goals. So essentially it's, where are we? What is our current economic base? Which direction should we go? What are the opportunities for the expansion of that economic base? And what can we do to more fully share the benefits of economic growth? And how do we get there? That will be the strategies outlined in the report. I want to talk a little bit about some of the existing conditions, and Director Olson talked about some of these as well. In addition, this is not including the challenges facing our downtown and most downtowns, because we talk about those a lot, so I wanted to highlight some other things. We recently began funding street projects and parks with sales tax in this city, which is not something we've done before. But we don't employ any retail attraction strategies. Cities who depend on sales tax often are, very deliberate about attracting retail. We haven't done that because we haven't been dependent on sales tax, but now we are. We need to know how much retail we're leaking to the suburbs, and what do we do about that? Where are some strategic retail sites that we want to attract people from Woodbury and Maplewood and other Roseville, and instead of our sales tax going there. So things like that. Needed investments in our public realm and high property taxes are among things we hear from prospective retailers. So we need to look at those things. When we can't fill a space on Grand Avenue because the prospective tenant comes and says, these sidewalks don't look good to me and my property taxes make my rent too high, we have to talk about that, because then they just go to another city, right, to a suburb where they don't have those issues. These are things we don't like to talk about, but this is the situation, right? So we have to name those challenges.
Director Newton, had a question from Commissioner
Certainly.
Naker that came up, I think, on the last slide, but I want to, so before you get too far into this one, I want to be
Certainly.
able
Would
to
you
have
like
her
for me to
ask
go
the
back,
question.
Chair?
Thank you, Chair Johnson. And sorry, I know you're on a roll, Director. I just wanted to, on that previous slide, to sort of frame all of this, what is the time frame of the plan, of the strategy that we're looking for? Because I think that, you know, if it's a 3-year time horizon, a 5-year time horizon, that really affects what the strategies are and what the challenges and
Certainly.
opportunities are that are being looked at.
Chair and Commissioner, that's a good question. And as we look at the strategy, what we'll end up with are near-term strategies. What are the things that are low-hanging fruit? And then things that we need to set up some sort of infrastructure or policy infrastructure for. And then what's the 10-year kind of horizon? So a consultant who does this work will look at our situation and our opportunities, and they will lay out sort of what can we jump on quickly and partner with our other organizations, or what do we already have in place that we can capitalize on, and then sort of lay out those nearer and longer term strategies for us.
Okay, as a quick follow-up, I would really encourage us to have, in addition to near and long, have a targeted timeline in mind, just because I think a strategic plan always benefits from people understanding and the consultant understanding how far afield they should be forecasting. And also, I think it helps us know when we need to do another one.
Absolutely. Chair, and Commissioner, I hear what you're saying. I think we'd probably be looking at sort of immediate 3 and 5 year, probably it would be sort of like a 5-year strategy in my head, just based on those I've worked on in the past. But that's certainly, I am here today to tell you what we're thinking and to gather your input. So we have a draft RFP right now, but I'd love to hear your input. And that's why we're here today. So that's an excellent question, though, and thank you for asking. Approximately 22% of the zone land in St. Paul is property tax exempt. And you all know this. We have government buildings, colleges, universities, hospitals, places of worship. That's just a thing that we need to think about. So these are just things that we'll be pointing out to the consultant, and they'll be looking at potential strategies around some of those things. Some of the land that is city-owned, county-owned, MnDOT-owned is sort of the low-hanging fruit there around getting those things developed and HRA-owned. But there are other things that can be done with in those areas. You all know that our arena and our convention center complex generate a huge amount of economic impact annually, and you know that the facility's 25 years old and in need of renovation. This is something that we're actively seeking funding from the state on, but it's something that when I list these existing conditions, it's because these are the things I will be sharing with a consultant, so that they're looking at all of the sort of current situation that we're in. So I've just listed some of these for them to be on the top of your mind. St. Paul's losing population, but our region is not. So that's something that we need to look at. Our housing production has decreased, and our rents have increased, even as we've eliminated parking minimums, eliminated exclusionary single-family zoning, and enacted policies to facilitate the construction of accessory dwelling units. So those are things that the consultants will want to look at. Our eviction rates are historically high. At the same time, our existing affordable housing developments are experiencing very high levels of non-payment of rent. And so there was this, the eviction moratoriums, and there's all those dynamics. Those same properties are experiencing very steep increases in insurance and other operating costs, which introduces the risk of those properties going into foreclosure. So these are, again, I sound a little bit like a doomsayer, but I'm pointing out for you the challenges that need to be addressed that are broader than kind of some of the things that we look at on a day-to-day basis. We do have a pilot program for emergency renaissances to prevent evictions in our 2025 budget, as you know. So I'm pointing out some of those things that we will share with consultants, and that we're proud of, and things that we are doing to address these things. But these are the things we need to think about. And as you know, several of our major mixed-use developments have stalled or are struggling, though we're starting to see some signs of advancement in United Village, Highland Bridge, and the Heights. But we do hear from developers and investors that our regulatory environment and our permitting process are challenging and complicated and slow, and that the capital markets are going to other cities because of that. One more page of a few existing conditions is that, as you know, many of our small businesses and commercial corridors are experiencing challenges, though we have seen many new businesses opening across the city as well. And we do have the Commercial Corridors program as a complement to our very popular but heavily oversubscribed Neighborhood Star program. And finally, and most importantly, our region and our city have very significant racial disparities in economic opportunity, as you know, including disparities in unemployment, educational attainment, home ownership, business ownership, commercial property ownership, and other areas. We have a lot of partner organizations who, in our economic development work, so consultants would look at the work that we are doing, Greater MSP, the St. Paul Downtown Alliance, the Port Authority, Ramsey County's Community and Economic Development Department, Visit St. Paul, all of the organizations that you see here. I have at the bottom of that others as a question, just so that if you think of any others that that I'm not thinking of here in this list, I'd love for you to get back with me on that, because we'll have, once we do send out an RFP and we start to get a consultant contracted, we'll want to make sure we're not forgetting any of our partners in economic development. Resources to consider. Any consultant doing this kind of work will look at the work that's been done recently in the recent past. So the Ramsey County Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan is definitely something they would be looking at. The Downtown Investment Strategy, our comp plan, our consolidated plan for our HUD resources, our small area plans. And so again, if there are other reports or documents that you think should be considered by the consultant, this is the starter list for you. If there's anything else, we want to remember that. And I just want to point out that PED, the Economic Development Team, will lead the project and the work of the consultant, but the work will involve all of PED, not just the ED department, and several other departments. And some of them you might not think of. DSI, that permitting process, that's the sort of the gateway for businesses and individuals to get things going. And if it's cumbersome or streamlined, and I'm not criticizing the department, most cities have the same challenge, but what are the ways that we can streamline that, those efforts? In public works, the physical infrastructure improves our economic conditions. It improves our competitiveness in attracting retail and real estate development. OFS, OFE, police, Office of Neighborhood Safety, all of these departments and the work that they do impact our ability to create economic development success in our city. Then just the proposal requirements, and this is fairly standard. We would want to make sure that the proposals will demonstrate understanding of our economic and community dynamics. They would provide a detailed scope of work and what their methodology would be, an overview of their experience, including expertise in equity-focused economic development, resumes and relevant experience of their team members, and an itemized budget with clear breakdown of costs. We approved not to exceed an amount in the budget, but it'll be a competitive proposal, right? So we'll have consultants who will provide, this is my scope, this is what our schedule will be, this is what we can do, and this is how much we would charge for that. And then contract information on references. I'm thinking, I put this timeline together of just, May 15th for the RFP to be issued, and June 30th for a submission deadline, hoping to have interviews in mid-July and award a contract in mid-August, and then start the project in September 1st. I anticipate that this would probably take, by the time it was completely done, and it's probably 9 months to a year, a long project, but we would look at the scope and they would provide a schedule, and I may be stretching that a little bit farther than it needs to be. So I share all of that. Again, I have a document that essentially has all of this in it. I sort of just cut and pasted from the document for you to have a presentation on it. But as you think about it and provide me with feedback, we'll be finalizing that document, and then we can talk about the process for seeking a consultant and how we will go forward. So I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director Newton. I know I see two hands at the time, Commissioner Neeker and then Commissioner Yang.
Thanks, Chair Johnson, and thanks, Director Newton. This is really helpful. I'm glad we have the opportunity to give feedback early on in the process. The one word that I think summarizes my hopes for this plan that you have on your second page is focused. I recognize that there are lots of different factors that play into our economic development capacities, but I worry that the broader we go, the less detailed we'll be. And I would much rather have a very detailed, heavy on tactics, not strategies, plan, rather than something that sort of touches on lots of different things. And so just as one example, when you mentioned DSI's permitting process, I would also add PED's
Indeed.
Permitting process, which also sometimes we hear is slow, or
Certainly.
to navigate. That alone, I think, that sort of like our own in-house operations could be an entire study and a very detailed one at that. So if we have the capacity to do it all, great, but I just want to caution us against trying to bite off too much.
Yep. Chair, Commissioner, I appreciate that. And I think in looking at those types of things, and when I sort of point out these existing conditions, and I imagine in a report, it would be like pointing out, like making the importance of those things and the impact of not streamlining them so that we're able to prioritize where we internally need to focus our efforts on making things like that work better. But I completely hear you.
Commissioner Yang.
Thanks, Chair Johnson. Well, I really like what I see so far, Director Newton. The one piece of feedback I wanted to share is that the existing condition that I hear over and over from both big and small developers is really about the challenging permitting process. And so I do have interest in making sure the consultant really digs into that by getting input from developers especially on what exactly they mean by it's challenging. We want it to be streamlined because I am confident that if we get more details about that and figure out how we can resolve it, then we really can get to the heart of bringing in more development into our city.
Chair and Commissioner, that's a great point. And I want to remind you that we started some of that work with the audit committee last year, and we had Baker Tilly do a sort of an initial scan. That project lost its legs a little bit with the consultant team, but we did get some good work from it. And I don't know if you know this yet, but Tia Anderson from DSI is joining PED. And she has worked deeply in the site plan process and on core teams. And one of the things that I'd like for her to focus on is looking at the process throughout the city, not just in PED or DSI, but we're all related. And I think she'll be able to. We're going to give her some time to focus on that internally. And I hadn't shared that with you, I don't think. So that's great news, and I think we're excited to move forward on that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Commissioner Yang, is there a follow-up, or is that everything? Okay. Does any other commissioner have any questions on this item? I think my initial 2 cents, Commissioner Bowie, I see your hand as well, on the anything else category of like what to consider is just if there are current, I really want us to find about as much as in current existence of like latest reports, initiatives, studies, investments that have happened citywide. So many of the corridors are investing in some, corridors, district councils are investing in kind of like the outlook for their area. And I think to Commissioner Naker's point, right, in so many occasions you'll hear folks talk about, well, one size doesn't fit all communities. And I fundamentally do agree with that sentiment, and yet when we're thinking about a citywide strategy, there is overlap. And so I really do think that this report really should focus on those intersections and really talk about the tactics that can be employed citywide, at the same time being informed by just how some of our neighborhood, district councils, our neighborhood, Eastside Funders Group, for example, neighborhood business CDFIs that are currently right now just like doing similar work. So I would encourage us to get about as much of that from our 17 district councils, our, I think we have 18 commercial corridors. I'm looking over at Daniela, don't get mad at me, Annie. But we have several commercial corridors that we're, just doing the funding through. So I'm thinking about connecting with those on the forefront. So we have every written document or piece that they have so they can look at it. So it doesn't have to be so, disaggregated by neighborhood of like, okay, like here, this is what's going to fit here and this is what's going to fit there. I think really having a citywide structure really allows us to know where to invest our dollars, and I think it'll be vital for even future discussions surrounding partnerships with the county, especially as you're heading into being clear about where the city of St. Paul is heading from an economic development standpoint. Commissioner Bowie.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Thank you so much, Director Newton. Just a really short, I really like where, first where we're beginning with thinking about this RFP and this special person who's going to come in and deliver and help us get across the finish line with improving our economic development. For me, my advice, advice are just kind of like my priority, similar to Commissioner Naker, but for me more solely around improving the user experience. Especially now, like how we do business is very different. A lot of people do business, online. They are trying to do their research and get all the information that they can. And especially with government that functions in like an analog, that could be really hard. Not knowing all the different permit applications, not knowing where all the different portals are, what they need, not only for like permitting or zoning. Another thing that I would really like to see come out of this consulting report is really getting our properties prepped and ready to build. And like how is St. Paul designed and ready to do business? Because I think even if someone was to come and want to invest, there's a lot of things that we need to streamline and improve to even be ready for them. And then like a side note, I really like what you said, particularly around attracting businesses. You know, I served on the Visit St. Paul with you and Councilmember Naker, and like we're always looking at like ways to attract concerts and music venues and different large attractions. But you know, for someone who represents the Midway, I'm always looking at what can we attract there, what new restaurant wants to work in St. Paul. You know, earlier we had the org meeting about, I think it was you, Councilmember Pravatsky, of like when we go travel and we come back, we act as if we can't have what we enjoyed out of town here in St. Paul. And I experience that often. Like there's a restaurant, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish this could be in St. Paul. And that is a possibility, but just like, what are those, like, what's those steps for someone who has like a dream, a vision, an idea of wanting to bring a business to St. Paul, and like, how are we prepped and ready to support them in that venture? So
Those are great comments, Chair and Commissioners, and I'd love to just touch on a couple of them. I know you've got to go. Eastside Real Estate Funders I hadn't thought of, and I'll add that to the list. We have a group in our team, a team within PED, who's mixed with planning, housing, and economic development, and we're looking at all of our HRA lots and really looking at the zoning and what the possibilities are there, and so like really focusing in on how do we kind of make these ready. And then the retail attraction thing is something that we haven't done here, that I have some experience in, and that I'm kind of excited about, so I can tell you more about that later. But so all of those things, that's all great feedback, and I want to talk to you all more about it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Director Newton. We are going to be wrapping up on time here, so I would encourage folks to also just take a deeper look into the materials, the presentation that was sent to you from Director Newton, and if you have feedback, be sure to let her know. My last comment would be more so just never miss opportunity to do a study to also provide opportunities to build up your team. So I look forward to seeing where the recommendations lie for gaps that we think are existing within the city, to be able to use those later on for leverage, especially around new positions and rationale behind their hiring. So I also hope that the hiring personnel pace is a part of the scope too. We do have one more item. We do have to take a formal action to lay it over, and so I'll let it be read into the record.
Item number 5 is a staff report 25-65, tax increment financing TIF update.
So as a precursor, this is really important. This is the 3.0 version of the TIF update that we had all requested. Jenny, thank you so much for being here to do this. I know that we're at time, and I want to be able to hear this presentation, so I'm actually going to take a motion from Commissioner Bowie to lay this matter over until May 7th HRA meeting, because we will not be meeting next week. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
6 in favor, 0 opposed. This item will be laid over to May 7th.
All right, and so, without further ado, I'm sorry if there's any discussions. I'm not taking them right now. We are adjourned.